Thomas clutched the worn photograph, the edges softened by years of anxious thumbs. Lily. Her smile, bright and untroubled, mocked him from the past. It had been 15 years since she vanished, swallowed whole by the murky embrace of the Blackwood Marsh. 15 years of unanswered questions, gnawing guilt, and a hope that flickered like a dying ember. He remembered the day vividly. They were children, barely teenagers, exploring the fringes of the marsh, daring each other to venture deeper into its tangled heart. Lily, ever the bolder of the two, had chased a butterfly with wings the color of sunset. He'd warned her, the marsh was dangerous, people got lost. She'd laughed, a carefree sound that still echoed in his dreams, and plunged ahead. He'd blinked, distracted by a buzzing insect, and when he looked again, she was gone. Vanished. The search had been exhaustive, frantic. The whole town had turned out, wading through the swampy terrain, calling her name until their voices were raw. But the marsh had remained silent, yielding nothing. Eventually, the search dwindled, the posters faded, and Lily became a ghost, a whispered tragedy in the small town's history. Thomas, however, could never let her go. He'd left Blackwood shortly after, unable to bear the suffocating weight of her absence. He'd traveled, worked odd jobs, always searching, always hoping for a sign, a clue, anything that could lead him back to her. He'd tried to move on, to build a life, but Lily's memory was a constant anchor, tethering him to the past. Then, a few weeks ago, a letter arrived. It was postmarked Blackwood, the familiar, slightly smudged handwriting tugging at his heart. It was from old Mrs. Abernathy, the town's eccentric historian, a woman who claimed to communicate with spirits and saw omens in the flight of birds. He'd always dismissed her as a harmless kook, but her words now resonated with a desperate kind of hope. "The lights are back, Thomas," she wrote. "The lantern lights of Blackwood Marsh. They say they guide the lost home. I believe Lily is calling. Lantern lights." He remembered the stories. Legends whispered by the townsfolk, tales of shimmering lights that appeared in the marsh, leading lost souls back to safety. Some said they were will-o'-the-wisps, deceptive spirits luring travelers to their doom. Others believed they were benevolent guides, remnants of those who had perished in the marsh, forever searching for a way out. He'd always dismissed them as folklore, the ramblings of superstitious minds. But Mrs. Abernathy's letter, coupled with the persistent ache in his heart, had ignited a spark of hope he thought long extinguished. He researched the legends, scouring old books and online forums, finding fragmented accounts of similar sightings. The more he learned, the more convinced he became that the lights might be his only chance to find Lily. He knew it was a long shot, a fool's errand perhaps. But he couldn't ignore the possibility, however slim. He had to try. He had to know. So, he packed his bags, dusted off his old hiking boots, and returned to Blackwood. The town was smaller than he remembered, the buildings weathered and worn, mirroring the passage of time and the lingering sadness that clung to the air. The Blackwood Marsh, however, remained unchanged, a vast expanse of murky water, tangled vegetation, and impenetrable fog, a silent guardian of its secrets. It waited for him. The town of Blackwood greeted Thomas with a mixture of curiosity and suspicion. The general store owner, a stout man with a perpetually worried expression, eyed him over the rim of his spectacles. "Thomas Walker, isn't it? Haven't seen you around these parts in, well, a long time." Thomas nodded, forcing a smile. "Good to see you too, Mr. Henderson. Just passing through." Mr. Henderson grunted, polishing a dusty counter with a rag. "Passing through, huh? Or looking for something?" He paused, his gaze shifting towards the window, towards the looming presence of the marsh. "They say the lights are back." Thomas felt a jolt, a surge of adrenaline. "The lights," he echoed, trying to sound casual. "Aye, the lantern lights. Some folks say they're just swamp gas, others say there's something more. Something, otherworldly." He lowered his voice, leaning closer. "They say they lead the lost home. But be warned, son. Some things are best left lost. The warning hung in the air, heavy and ominous. Thomas purchased some supplies, bottled water, insect repellent, a new flashlight, trying to ignore the weight of Mr. Henderson's words. He could feel the eyes of the other townsfolk on him, curious, pitying, perhaps even fearful. He was a reminder of a tragedy they'd tried to bury, wound that refused to fully heal. He walked down Main Street, past the boarded-up movie theater, the faded paint on the town hall, the silent houses with their drawn curtains. The town felt like a ghost of its former self, haunted by the memories of what it had lost. He stopped at the old police station, now little more than a dilapidated shack. Sheriff Brody, a man with a face etched with years of hard living, was sitting on the porch, whittling a piece of wood. "Sheriff," Thomas said, extending his hand. "It's been a while." Brody looked up, his eyes narrowed, then recognition dawned. "Thomas. Didn't expect to see you back here. Heard you were doing well for yourself in the city." "Trying to," Thomas replied, his voice strained. I heard some things. About the Marsh." Brody sighed, the sound heavy with resignation. "The lights again, eh? Don't go chasing shadows, Thomas. Some things are best left alone. The Marsh, it takes things, and it doesn't give them back." "I have to try, Sheriff," Thomas said, his voice firm. "I owe it to Lily." Brody shook his head, his eyes filled with a weary sadness. "I understand. But be careful out there. The Marsh is a dangerous place, even for those who know it well. And those lights, they ain't always what they seem." He spent the afternoon gathering information, talking to the older residents, piecing together the fragmented tales of the lantern lights. He learned that sightings were rare, often coinciding with periods of intense fog or unusual weather patterns. Some claimed the lights were connected to the spirits of those who had died in the marsh, their souls trapped between worlds. Others believed they were a natural phenomenon, a result of decaying vegetation and the release of phosphorescent gases. Regardless of their origin, the lights were always associated with a sense of mystery and unease. They were a reminder of the marsh's power, its ability to swallow people whole and leave no trace behind. As the sun began to set, casting long shadows across the town, Thomas felt a growing sense of apprehension. He knew he was venturing into the unknown, into a place where the boundaries between reality and illusion blurred. But he was determined to find Lily, even if it meant facing the darkest corners of the Blackwood Marsh. He had to. The next morning, Thomas stood at the edge of the Blackwood Marsh, the air thick with humidity and the scent of decay. The fog hung low, obscuring the depths of the swamp, creating an eerie, almost dreamlike atmosphere. He took a deep breath, the damp air filling his lungs, and stepped onto the muddy path that led into the unknown. The marsh was a labyrinth of tangled trees, stagnant pools, and treacherous bogs. Each step was a struggle, the mud sucking at his boots, the branches snagging at his clothes. The silence was oppressive, broken only by the buzzing of insects and the croaking of frogs. He felt a sense of isolation, as if he were the only person left in the world. He walked for hours, following the faintest of trails, relying on his memory of the marsh from his childhood. He remembered the secret places he and Lily used to explore, the hidden groves and the sun-dappled clearings. He tried to imagine her here, running through the trees, her laughter echoing through the swamp. But the memories were bittersweet, tinged with the pain of her absence. As the day wore on, the fog grew thicker, reducing visibility to mere feet. The marsh became even more disorienting, the familiar landmarks disappearing into the mist. He began to doubt himself, to question whether he was on the right path. He checked his compass, his map, but everything seemed to shift and change, as if the marsh itself was trying to mislead him. He decided to set up camp for the night. He found a relatively dry patch of ground near a cluster of cypress trees and pitched his tent. He started a small fire, the flames flickering in the gathering darkness, casting dancing shadows on the surrounding trees. The fire provided a sense of comfort, a small beacon of light in the overwhelming darkness. He ate a simple meal of canned beans and crackers, the silence amplifying every sound. He felt a growing sense of unease, a feeling that he was being watched. He scanned the surrounding trees, his hand resting on the handle of his knife. But he saw nothing, only the swirling fog and the impenetrable darkness. He told himself it was just his imagination, the product of exhaustion and fear. But he couldn't shake the feeling that he was not alone. He remembered the stories the townsfolk had told him, the tales of the spirits that haunted the marsh, the lost souls that wandered aimlessly through the swamp. He wondered if Lily was among them, trapped in this watery purgatory. As the night deepened, the sounds of the marsh intensified. The croaking of frogs became a deafening chorus, the buzzing of insects a relentless drone. He heard rustling in the underbrush, the snapping of twigs, the soft padding of unseen creatures. He tried to ignore the sounds, to convince himself that they were harmless. But his imagination ran wild, conjuring up images of grotesque creatures lurking in the shadows. He lay awake for hours, listening to the sounds of the marsh, his heart pounding in his chest. He knew he couldn't sleep, not with the feeling that he was being watched, that something was out there, waiting for him. He gripped the photograph of Lily, her smiling face a reminder of why he was here, of what he was fighting for. He would not give up. He would find her, no matter what it took. He had to. The night was long, and the marsh held its breath, waiting. The first light appeared just after midnight. Thomas, still wide awake, staring into the dying embers of his fire, almost missed it. A faint, ethereal glow, barely visible through the thick fog, flickering like a distant star. He held his breath, his heart pounding in his chest. Was it just a trick of the light, a figment of his imagination? Or was it real? He scrambled to his feet, grabbing his flashlight, his hand trembling. He pointed the beam towards the glow, but the light seemed to dim in response, as if shying away from the artificial brightness. He switched off the flashlight, plunging himself into darkness, and waited. Slowly, the ethereal glow intensified, becoming a distinct point of light, a small, flickering lantern hanging in the air. It was a soft, warm light, unlike anything he had ever seen, casting a gentle radiance on the surrounding fog. It pulsed with a slow, rhythmic beat, like a breathing heart. Thomas felt a surge of hope, a feeling so powerful it almost brought him to his knees. This was it. This was the sign he had been waiting for. The lantern light. The guide. He watched the light for what seemed like an eternity, mesmerized by its otherworldly beauty. It danced and swayed in the air, as if beckoning him to follow. He hesitated, fear warring with anticipation. He remembered the warnings of the townsfolk, the tales of the marsh's treachery, the stories of the lost souls. But he couldn't ignore the pull, the irresistible urge to follow the light. He took a tentative step forward, then another, his boots sinking into the mud. The light responded, moving further into the marsh, as if leading him on. He followed, his heart pounding in his chest, his senses heightened. The fog swirled around him, obscuring his vision, but the light remained constant, a beacon in the darkness. As he ventured deeper into the marsh, the landscape began to change. The trees grew taller, their branches twisted and gnarled, forming a dense canopy overhead. The ground became softer, more treacherous, the mud sucking at his boots with each step. The air grew colder, the humidity more intense. He felt as if he were entering a different world, a place where the rules of reality no longer applied. He stumbled and slipped, his body aching, his clothes soaked with sweat and mud. But he pressed on, driven by the unwavering hope that he was getting closer to Lily. He focused on the light, its gentle glow a constant source of encouragement. After what seemed like hours, the light stopped, hovering above a small clearing in the trees. Thomas emerged from the dense foliage, his breath coming in ragged gasps. He looked around, his eyes scanning the clearing, searching for any sign of Lily. The clearing was small and circular, surrounded by a ring of ancient cypress trees. The ground was covered in a thick layer of moss, soft and springy beneath his feet. The air was still and silent, the only sound the gentle lapping of water against the shore of a nearby pool. He saw nothing. No sign of Lily. No sign of anyone. Disappointment washed over him, a wave of despair threatening to overwhelm him. Had he been wrong? Had he been chasing a phantom, a figment of his imagination? Was Lily truly lost, forever beyond his reach? Then, he saw it. A faint, shimmering glow emanating from the center of the clearing. He took a step closer, his heart pounding in his chest. And there, standing in the middle of the clearing, bathed in an ethereal light, was Lily. Lily stood in the clearing, bathed in a soft, luminous glow. She looked exactly as he remembered her from that fateful day, 15 years ago. Her long, brown hair cascaded down her shoulders, her eyes sparkled with youthful energy, and her smile was as bright and radiant as the sun. She hadn't aged a day. Thomas stared at her, speechless, his mind reeling. It was Lily, but it couldn't be. It was impossible. She should be older, changed by time, scarred by life. But she was the same, frozen in time, as if the marsh had preserved her in a timeless amber. Lily, he whispered, his voice trembling. Is that really you? Lily smiled, a gentle, knowing smile that sent a shiver down his spine. Hello, Thomas, she said, her voice soft and melodic, like the gentle rustling of leaves. It's been a long time. He rushed towards her, desperate to embrace her, to feel her warmth, to confirm that she was real. But as he approached, he felt an invisible barrier, a force field that prevented him from getting too close. He reached out his hand, but his fingers brushed against nothing but air. What's happening? He asked, his voice filled with confusion and fear. Why can't I touch you? Lily's smile faltered, her eyes filled with a hint of sadness. I'm here, Thomas, she said. But I'm not entirely here. I'm connected to the marsh now. I'm a part of it. He looked around the clearing, taking in the ancient trees, the moss-covered ground, the still, silent pool. He felt the energy of the marsh, its ancient power, its mystical presence. He began to understand. Lily wasn't just in the marsh, she was of the marsh. What do you mean? He asked, his voice barely above a whisper. What happened to you, Lily? Lily hesitated, as if struggling to find the right words. When I got lost, she began, I wandered deeper and deeper into the marsh. I was scared, alone, and I didn't know where to go. Then, I saw the lights. They led me to this place, to this clearing. And here. I found peace. I found a connection to something greater than myself. But what about me? Thomas pleaded, his voice filled with desperation. What about Mom and Dad? We've been searching for you for 15 years. We thought you were dead. Lily's eyes filled with tears, but she remained calm, composed. I know, Thomas, she said. And I'm so sorry for the pain I've caused. But I can't leave. I can't go back. This is where I belong now. This is who I am. Thomas stared at her, his mind struggling to comprehend what she was saying. He had finally found his sister, after all these years, but she was lost to him in a different way. She was alive, but she was no longer the Lily he remembered. She was something else, something other. He sank to his knees, his heart breaking. He had come so far, endured so much, only to be faced with this impossible choice. He could stay with Lily, in this enchanted clearing, and become a part of the marsh himself. Or he could leave, return to the world he knew, and live with the knowledge that his sister was alive, but forever beyond his reach. The marsh held its breath, waiting for his decision. The soft glow surrounding Lily pulsed gently, a silent invitation and a heartbreaking farewell. The silence stretched between them, heavy with unspoken words and unfulfilled desires. Thomas looked at Lily, at the youthful glow that surrounded her, and knew that he couldn't ask her to leave. He couldn't ask her to abandon the peace she had found, the connection she had forged with the Marsh. It would be selfish, cruel, to tear her away from the only home she had known for the past 15 years. "I understand," he said finally, his voice hoarse with emotion. "I don't like it, but I understand. You're happy here." Lily smiled, her eyes filled with gratitude. "Thank you, Thomas," she said. "Thank you for understanding. It means more to me than you know." He stood up, his legs shaky, his body exhausted. He knew he had to leave. He couldn't stay in the clearing, not with the knowledge that Lily was there, so close yet so far away. He needed to return to the world he knew, to the life he had built, to the memories of Lily that he had cherished for so long. "I should go," he said, his voice barely audible. "It's getting late." Lily nodded, her eyes filled with sadness. "Will you come back?" she asked. Thomas hesitated. He didn't know if he could bear to see her again, to be reminded of what he had lost. But he couldn't deny her request. He owed her that much. "Yes," he said. "I'll come back. I promise." Lily smiled, a faint, hopeful smile that warmed his heart. "Thank you, Thomas," she said. "I'll be waiting." He turned and walked away, his steps heavy, his heart aching. He didn't look back. He couldn't bear to see Lily standing there, bathed in her ethereal glow, a prisoner of the marsh. He retraced his steps through the dense foliage, the tangled trees, the treacherous bogs. The marsh seemed even more oppressive now, the fog thicker, the silence more profound. He felt as if he were being swallowed whole by the swamp, consumed by its darkness. As he walked, he thought about Lily, about the life she had led in the marsh, about the connection she had forged with nature. He wondered if she was truly happy, if she had found peace in this isolated place. Or if she was simply resigned to her fate, trapped in a timeless prison. He also thought about his parents, about the pain they had endured, about the hope they had never given up. He knew he had to tell them about Lily, about finding her alive. But he also knew that it would break their hearts to learn that she couldn't come home. He reached the edge of the marsh just as the sun began to rise, casting a faint glow over the horizon. He emerged from the trees, his body covered in mud, his clothes torn, his spirit broken. He looked back at the marsh, at the swirling fog, at the impenetrable darkness. He knew that Lily was still there, somewhere in the depths of the swamp, watching over him, waiting for him to return. He took a deep breath, filling his lungs with the crisp morning air. He turned and walked towards town, towards his old life, towards an uncertain future. He carried with him the knowledge that Lily was alive, but he also carried the burden of her secret, the weight of her impossible choice. He was leaving her behind, but he would never forget her. She would always be a part of him, a piece of his heart that belonged to the Blackwood Marsh. The sun climbed higher, chasing away the shadows, but the darkness remained, lurking in the depths of his soul. The following years were a tapestry woven with threads of sorrow and hope. Thomas returned to his life in the city, but Blackwood Marsh never truly left him. He visited Lily whenever he could, making the long journey back to the small town, each visit a bittersweet reunion. He would bring her news from the outside world, stories of his life, of his work, of his friends. He told her about their parents, about their unwavering love for her, about their continued hope for her return. He described the changes in the town, the new businesses that had opened, the old ones that had closed, the slow but inevitable passage of time. Lily would listen intently, her eyes filled with a mixture of curiosity and sadness. She seemed to exist in a timeless bubble, untouched by the cares and concerns of the outside world. She was content in her clearing, surrounded by the ancient trees, the moss-covered ground, the still, silent pool. She had found peace in the marsh, a connection to nature that transcended the boundaries of human understanding. Thomas never fully understood her connection to the marsh, but he respected it. He knew that she had found something special in that place, something that he could never comprehend. He accepted her choice, even though it broke his heart. He continued to visit his parents, sharing stories of Lily, keeping her memory alive. He never told anyone else about her, not even his closest friends. He knew that they wouldn't understand, that they would think he was crazy. He kept her secret close to his heart, a precious treasure that he would never share. Over time, the town of Blackwood began to heal. The memory of Lily's disappearance faded, replaced by new stories, new tragedies, new hopes. The marsh remained, a silent presence on the edge of town, a reminder of the past, a source of mystery and fear. Some people still spoke of the lantern lights, whispering tales of lost souls and otherworldly guides. But most dismissed them as folklore, the ramblings of superstitious minds. Thomas knew better. He had seen the lights with his own eyes, and he knew that they were real. He knew that they were a sign, a beacon of hope in the darkness. He lived his life, carrying the weight of his secret, the burden of his knowledge. He never forgot Lily, and he never gave up hope that one day, she would find a way to break free. Years turned into decades. Thomas grew older, his hair turned gray, his face lined with the passage of time. But his heart remained young, his love for Lily undimmed. He continued to visit her in the marsh, bringing her stories and memories, keeping her spirit alive. One day, as he was walking through the town, he saw a young girl standing at the edge of the marsh, staring into the fog. She reminded him of Lily, of the carefree child he had lost so many years ago. He approached her cautiously, his heart filled with a mixture of hope and trepidation. "Hello," he said gently. "What are you doing here?" The girl looked up at him, her eyes wide with wonder. "I'm looking for the lights," she said. "They say they can lead you to the lost." Thomas felt a shiver run down his spine. He had heard those words before, so many years ago. He looked at the girl, at her innocent face, and he knew that he had to tell her the truth. He sat down beside her and began to tell her his story, the story of Lily, the story of the lantern lights, the story of the Blackwood Marsh. He told her everything, from the moment Lily disappeared to his last visit to the clearing. The girl listened intently, her eyes never leaving his face. When he finished, she was silent for a long moment, her expression thoughtful. "Do you think she's happy?" she asked finally. Thomas looked at the marsh, at the swirling fog, at the impenetrable darkness. He thought about Lily, about her ethereal glow, about her connection to nature. He thought about the peace she had found, the solace she had discovered in the heart of the swamp. "Yes," he said. "I think she's happy. She's found a place where she belongs. She's a part of something bigger than herself." The girl smiled, a knowing smile that reminded him of Lily. "Maybe one day," she said, "she'll come home." Thomas looked at the girl, at her unwavering hope, and he felt a surge of warmth in his heart. Maybe she was right. Maybe one day, Lily would find a way to break free. Maybe one day, she would return to the world she had left behind. He stood up, his body feeling lighter than it had in years. He looked at the girl, at her bright eyes, and he knew that he had to pass on his story, to keep the legend of Lily alive for future generations. "Come on," he said. "I'll tell you more about the lights." He took her hand and led her towards town, towards the future, towards the hope that one day, the lost would find their way home. The sun set over the Blackwood Marsh, casting long shadows across the town, but the lantern lights continued to flicker, a beacon of hope in the darkness, reminder that even in the darkest of places, love and memory can endure. And somewhere, deep in the heart of the swamp, Lily continued to glow, a guardian of the marsh, a symbol of the enduring power of nature, and a testament to the unbreakable bonds of family. The end. This story is already finished. This story is already finished. This story is already finished.